German Chancellor Friedrich Merz says Germany will suspend arms exports to Israel that could be used in the Gaza Strip. This marks a major shift for the German government, which has been one of Israel's staunchest allies and largest arms suppliers. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has condemned the decision. This comes after Israel announced plans to take control of Gaza City, sparking widespread condemnation both internationally and at home.
Germany is drawing a line. In a major policy shift, Berlin is suspending weapons exports to Israel that could be used for its military offensive in the Gaza Strip. The statement by German Chancellor Friedrich Merz came in response to a decision by the Israeli Security Cabinet to take control of the densely populated Gaza City. While Merz asserted that Israel had a right to defend itself against Hamas, he also said the German government remains deeply concerned about the ongoing suffering of the civilian population in the Gaza Strip. With the planned offensive, the Israeli government bears even greater responsibility than before for providing for them. Far-right members of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition have been pushing for a total takeover of Gaza, with some even calling for Jewish resettlement in the enclave. But Israel's military leadership opposes the Gaza City takeover plan. The Israeli Armed Forces Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, reportedly warned Netanyahu that it could endanger the remaining hostages and further strain Israel's army after nearly 2 years of war. Opposition to the war is growing among the Israeli public. Opinion polls show that most Israelis want the war to end with a deal that secures the release of the remaining hostages. On Thursday, thousands protested Netanyahu's plan outside the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem and in several other locations across the country.
I want my government to bring back all the hostages in one deal and to stop this war. To continue the war is a disaster for the Palestinians and for us Israelis as well.
Israel is facing growing condemnation internationally over its conduct in Gaza amid widespread hunger, displacement, and death. Besides the German Chancellor, other European leaders have also sharply criticized the plan to further expand the Gaza offensive, including the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who urged the Israeli government to reconsider in a social media post. Meanwhile, Israeli forces continue their strikes across Gaza. The Israeli military released this video claiming it shows an attack on an armed rocket launcher used to target southern Israel. But for Gaza's civilians, the prospect of an even greater escalation by Israel means even more suffering. Though the timing of Israel's operation in Gaza City is yet unclear, the government is expected to order another mass evacuation.
We can now speak to Jakob Schindler. He's the senior director of the Counter-Extremism Project, a nonprofit, nonpartisan international organization that works to stop the spread of extremist ideologies and violence. Hans, welcome back to DW. It's always great to have you on the show. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu has slammed Germany's decision, saying it was rewarding Hamas. What's your take on that?
It was quite a surprising decision. There was nothing that really pointed to Germany changing its stance on weapons deliveries to Israel. There was a slowdown in arms deliveries to Israel very temporarily under the last government. Now, this is a very interesting decision, only weapons that can be used in Gaza, while, of course, the bulk of exports, arms exports from Germany benefit the Israeli Navy, which doesn't really play a role in Gaza.
I want to take a look at the plan that triggered this move by Germany, taking over Gaza City. How is that going to bring Israel closer to achieving its war goals?
Well, Israel is really in a lose-lose situation. As long as there are parts of the Gaza Strip that are not controlled by an alternative security forces, whether it's the IDF or any other security forces other than Hamas, it enables a non-ending whack-a-mole game where every time where the IDF is, Hamas withdraws, and where the IDF isn't, it regroups. So taking control over the full Gaza Strip from a military counterterrorism perspective makes sense. Of course, there are major drawbacks if this is the IDF who provides security. other than an alternative security structure, whether it's Arab forces, where it's unclear which Arab forces, or the UN, or any other alternative arrangement.
I want to look at those drawbacks in a second, but first, you mentioned it's a game of whack-a-mole. What is left of Hamas almost 2 years into this war?
Well, we are now at the stage where Hamas is back to being a pure terror organization without a real military wing. So it's not organized military resistance against an offensive of Israel, but it is these harassment attacks against Israeli positions, Israeli soldiers, also always drawing in Palestinian civilians for propaganda purposes to make sure that they get harmed. So it is really a question now of whether this network of individual cells can be brought under control, and this will not be possible if parts of the Gaza Strip are not controlled by a force other than Hamas, even if it's just 25%.
The hostages' families fear that an expansion of the war will endanger the lives of the people that are still being held by Hamas. The militant group yesterday said that Netanyahu's recent move shows his desire, and I'm quoting them here, to sacrifice the hostages. The hostages are the only bargaining chip Hamas still holds. Would they ever agree to a deal that would see them hand over all the hostages?
What we have seen over the last several months, really, is every time there is a ramping up of international pressure on Israel, Hamas changes the guard posts for a temporary or permanent ceasefire deal. So they only need to survive. For them, if more Palestinians die, sadly, it's good news, because they can use this as a propaganda tool to increase further the pressure on Israel. Israel, as I said, is in a really, really difficult situation. Therefore, there is some discussion within Israel that this decision is essentially trying to create leverage in the negotiations to get at least a couple more hostages out in some kind of piecemeal deal in the next couple of weeks. But it is very clear that when it comes to all of the remaining hostages, alive and dead, there is going to be a small number that Hamas will not be willing to release, because as soon as they release, then they have lost all their leverage. So that's why a couple of months ago, there was a discussion, maybe a possible deal would include Hamas leadership leaving the Gaza Strip. But again, there is no Arab nation that actually wants to receive them.
Mm-hmm. The one thing missing in what was announced in the early hours of today is an exit strategy. Once more, how risky is an expansion of the war at this stage without a clear exit route?
That was always the problem, that the discussion on what is the end state of the government in Gaza, who provides this, who provides security, was very, very difficult politically to achieve inside the Israeli government, where you have various factions, some very much on the hardline front here. And that basically meant Netanyahu has to creep forward with his decisions. Now he's not going to take control of all of the Gaza Strip, just Gaza City. The problem is, for the IDF, this is a nightmare. First of all, means more reservists need to be called up. They need to serve longer terms. That means the Israeli economy will take another hit. The IDF controlling now an increasing part of the Gaza Strip means more targets for harassment attacks by Hamas cells and Palestinian Islamic Jihad cells, means more, potentially more Palestinian civilians that get harmed and killed. It is dangerous for the hostages. So this is the worst of the options that Israel could have had. But it really is caused by the fact that there was never a clear discussion and a hard decision of the Israeli government who should run Gaza after they leave. Premier Minister Netanyahu said last night, we don't want to govern Gaza, but he, apart from mentioning Arab forces without specifying which Arab forces they should be, still seems not to be able to get a decision through his own government of who should provide this alternative security.
And nobody is necessarily volunteering to that end. Many experts argue, Hans, that eradicating Hamas cannot be achieved militarily. As an expert on extremism, where do you stand on that?
It depends on what you define as eradicating Hamas. Cutting Hamas down to a very small terrorist concern inside the Gaza Strip, that's nearly achieved. A few elements are missing, as I said, as long as there's part of Gaza being under control of Hamas or free from IDF control or any other control, that further reduction is going to be very hard to achieve. Hamas as a over the region spread out organization with money outside Israel, with its political leadership outside Israel and the Palestinian territories, that cannot be eradicated. It's a terrorist ideology that is hard to eradicate. But cutting Hamas down to a size that it doesn't present a continuing danger both for Israel as well as for Palestinian civilians, who it takes essentially as cannon fodder in this war, that is achievable. But that's the only thing that can be achieved. Anything else beyond that would require far greater international efforts to go very strategically and very effectively against the Hamas money. And that is unlikely unless all of the negotiations are done or completely break down.
That was Hans-Jakob Schindler. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Let's bring in Alon Liel. He's the former Director General of Israel's Foreign Ministry. Welcome to DW, Mr. Liel. First, I'd like to get your reaction to Germany's move.
It's very surprising, but I think it's an important decision. Besides the fact that this decision yesterday of the Israeli cabinet is wrong, I think militarily, politically, one of the reasons it was done is that we were sure that we are immune of any international pressure. And Israel simply ignored all the messages that we got from the international community that this war should come to an end. And I think one of the reasons we ignored it was that we felt that we have two very important countries in our pocket, deep in our pocket, and this is the United States and Germany. So this German decision is not less than dramatic.
What impact do you expect this to have on German-Israeli relations going forward?
I think, first of all, I think our Gaza problem is not a military problem. I think the main problem we have at this stage is the growing isolation of Israel internationally. So what's happening to us, especially a week ago with the additional 12 countries recognizing Palestine, is that Israel is finding itself in a very dangerous international corner. And now, when you add Germany to these pressures, it's not a matter of bilateral relations with each of the countries, France, Britain, Germany. It's the overall picture. I'm a diplomat by profession, and I don't see a global country like Israel isolating itself from the rest of the international community. So I think the picture is not country by country, but the overall picture.
I want to look at two countries, though, because they're very important here, the U.S. and Israel, because so far the U.S. is very, very unconditionally standing by Israel. And it needs to be said here that 69% of Israel's weapons come from the U.S. So we're seeing this increasing isolation when it comes to European countries. Canada has also taken steps. But how significant is the U.S. support here? And do you expect the U.S. to also ramp up pressure on Netanyahu at some point?
The U.S. support, ongoing support, is critical, especially when it's becoming the last and only country in the world that is supporting us. I think what will happen soon, maybe even in September in the UN Assembly, is with countries recognizing Palestine, is that very soon it will come again to a vote to accept Palestine as a member state of the UN, and it will be 14 against the United States. And I don't know for how long can the United States continue with this vetoing Security Council resolutions. So I think we are not very far from
Why would they stop? Why would they stop vetoing, though? What would have to change for them to change their stance?
I think what will have to change is to clarify that the damage to the American international status because of the support for Israel is costing them. I think this is the only point in which Trump, a president like Trump, that so far backed us on everything, will change the American policy.
On the issue of Palestinian statehood, Germany has always held that the recognition of a Palestinian state would have to come at the end of negotiations towards a two-state solution. Do you see that position changing in the near future?
I think it will change. To tell you a secret, I even hope it will change, because the overall goal of Israel in this war is not destroy Hamas, it's destroying the two states idea. And I think internationally, there is a consensus on the two states idea, and I don't see another solution. So I think this wave of recognition, from which we see, by the way, Germany, Japan, and Italy out of this momentum. I think once these three countries will join the momentum, all three of them, the United States will have to change its position.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to start wrapping up, but I do want to look ahead for a moment and look at what's ahead for Gaza, because Prime Minister Netanyahu says even though he wants to take control of Gaza City, he does not want Israel to control the Gaza Strip. He wants to establish a civil administration that belongs neither to Hamas nor to the Palestinian Authority. How could that become a reality, and one in which the Palestinian people get a say?
The only civil administration I can see in the pipeline running Gaza is the Israeli civil administration. And this means conquering Gaza. There is no other civil administration that Israel will agree to or can emerge and Israeli will agree to. One of the principles is that it will not be any Palestinian civil administration, not Hamas and not the PA. So this is, in fact, the conquering of Gaza, that we are preparing to control Gaza, and who knows for how long. And I think this is a tragedy. We will not only isolate ourselves, I don't think we can carry additional 2 million Palestinians on our shoulders regarding health conditions, any type of humanitarian conditions. I don't think Israel, as a small country, can handle it.
That's former Israeli diplomat Alon Liel. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, joining me now is Stefan Mayer. He's a member of the German parliament from the CSU. That's the Bavarian sister party of Chancellor Merz's Christian Democrats. He's also a member of the Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee. Mr. Mayer, it's good to have you with us. This is an unprecedented move by Germany. Is it the right move?
I'm deeply convinced that it's certainly our main purpose to support Israel in its right to defend itself and to defend its people according to international law. That's certainly the main purpose of the support of Germany. On the other hand, certainly it's our main goal, as there are still German citizens among them, to force the terror organization Hamas to release the 28 hostages, and at least 20 of them should be still alive. And I'm not sure if this new development in Israel from last night is the right way to conduct this goal to force the Hamas organization to release the hostages. So I have understanding for this new position of the federal German government to suspend temporarily the export only of those weapons which could be used in the Gaza Strip.
So you're saying it is the right thing to be doing now?
I think it's we must differentiate between those weapons which can be used in an offensive way in the Gaza Strip, and those which are necessary to enable the Israel of armed forces to defend the Israeli people. And I think this distinction is understandable. So I support the German federal government in its new approach. And as I said, it's only a temporary suspension and only of those weapons and of those military equipment which can be used in an offensive way in the Gaza Strip.
Mr. Mayer, you know, there have been voices in Germany calling for an arms embargo for quite some time. Those voices usually come from the Social Democrats, from the left, and from the Greens. Now we have a conservative chancellor suspending weapons deliveries. How is this irony going to sit with your voters, in Bavaria, for example?
I'm also deeply convinced that there is still a deep distinction between the position of the Social Democrats, and there are other voices too in Germany who support and who promote total suspension of exports of weapons and of military equipment to Israel, and the new position of the federal government in Germany. So. On the other hand, we have to see that even in Israel, it's very intensively criticized if this new approach of the Israeli government to invade the whole Gaza Strip is the right way, especially in order to fulfill the goal to release or to have the 27 or 28 hostages who should be still alive in Israel.
Mr. Mayer, I'm wondering, does this suspension of arms deliveries, does it throw Germany's political establishment, of which you are a member, into an identity crisis? You know, unwavering support of Israel, it is part of conservative political Germany's DNA. I remember what the former Chancellor Angela Merkel said when she said, you know, it was part of Germany's Staatsräson to always support Israel. Now you have Germany, the second biggest weapons supplier to Israel, showing, you could argue, that it does not trust Israel to use the weapons it sells to Israel in Gaza.
Israel and the Israeli people still can be assured that we stand beside them. We stand at the side of the Israeli people. We are not neutral in this conflict. We totally understand that it's according to international law, it's the right of Israel to defend themselves, and I'm deeply convinced that it's the right approach of the Israeli government to delete Hamas and to destroy Hamas. But I'm also convinced that at the actual time, it's not very clever and very deliberate to invade the whole Gaza Strip. And so I'm deeply convinced that this new decision of the federal German government isn't any step away from our support of Israel. And certainly, as you mentioned, it certainly still belongs to the Staatsräson of Germany to respect the right of Israel to defend itself. And the existence of Israel is the prior topic and the prior goal of Germany.
Are you worried, Mr. Mayer, that the current Israeli government is on a course that it's taking Israel on a path that will at some point just become unsustainable for German foreign policy? Are you worried that there's going to be alienation taking place between Israel and Germany because of what is happening to the Palestinians?
We are still having very close ties to Israel, to the Israeli people. And as I said, I think our common main goal now is to release to let the hostage be released. And beneath that, certainly, as I said, we are not neutral. We are supporting. We are beckoning the Israeli government, and I'm deeply convinced that, for instance, now it's unthinkable to accept Palestine as an independent state. there are too many open questions at the table. So we support Israel, and this new approach of the federal government of Germany doesn't mean any distinctive change in our deep support of Israel.
Could we argue that this decision could possibly trigger a crisis within the current coalition government? I mean, is this the stuff that makes or breaks a government?
No, absolutely not. I'm very much convinced that this doesn't mean any conflict to the federal government of Germany. As you already said, certainly some voices of the Social Democrats are even forcing further suspensions and further sanctions on Israel. I'm deeply convinced that it would be the false way to sanction Israel and to pose any sanctions on Israel. And I think you must not overestimate now this new approach. It only refers to military equipment which could be used in an offensive way in the Gaza Strip. And certainly we will continue our support of Israel, and also by the delivery of weapons and of military equipment, especially in supporting the Israeli people to defend itself.
Okay. German lawmaker Stefan Mayer. Mr. Mayer, we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. It's an important story. Thank you.
All the best to you. Thank you very much.